And
Just
I
a
am going
quick
to
note.
turn. Whoop.
Sorry, quick note, Serena is on the call. Hi, Serena.
Oh, she is here. Great. So Lily, I will ask you to take over, and I'm going to ask if you could just let all of your team members stop and say hello. I think it's important to recognize everybody that had a hand in this. So I will turn it over to Lily Adamo.
Of course, thank you. So just to introduce myself really quickly, my name is Lily Adamo and I'm a rising junior at the University of Connecticut, majoring in environmental science. And this summer I had the privilege of working at WestCOG along with my co-fellow Liam Ford, who I can pass it over to now.
Hi, everybody. I'm a natural resources student at the University of Connecticut. Like I said, like Lily said, working alongside her at WestCOG, and I'll pass it on to Michio.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michio. I am a senior at University of Connecticut studying natural resources, and I was working at the Naugatuck Valley COG along with my co-fellow, Adrian Huck, who I will pass it over to.
Hi everyone, I'm Adrian Huck. I am a rising junior at Tufts University and my major is applied environmental studies, and I'm excited to be returning to NVCOG as a fellow. And I will pass it to Haley.
Hello everyone, my name is Haley Sybeck and I am a rising junior at the University of Connecticut, where I am a business major with a minor in sustainability. And I had the honor this summer of working with the Northeastern Connecticut Council of Governments. And now I will pass to Annika.
Hi all, my name is Annika. I am a rising senior at Wesleyan University and I am an English and Environmental Studies major there. And this summer I had the immense privilege of working at SCOG. And I will pass to Quinn.
Hi everyone, my name is Quinn Walters. I'm a rising senior at Wake Forest University. I'm majoring in mathematical economics and a minor in environmental studies. This summer, I was lucky enough to work with the Metro COG. It was a wonderful time. And so now I'll pass it off to Emily.
Hi everyone, I'm a rising senior at the University of Connecticut studying environmental studies and geographic information science. I had the privilege of working this summer in the Capital Region Council of Governments alongside Monet Paredes, who I will pass along to.
Hello, everybody. I'm Monet. I am a rising junior at the University of Connecticut studying political science and environmental studies. And like Emily said, we work together in CROG, and I'll pass to Liam Remus.
Hello, I'm Liam Remus. I'm going into my senior year at Connecticut College, where I'm studying environmental studies and government. I had the opportunity to be in RiverCog this summer, and I'll pass it to Adrian B.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Adrian Beckford. I'm a rising senior at Connecticut College, majoring in environmental studies and minoring in government. I had the pleasure of working with SCROG this summer. And I believe that is everybody. So we'll move on with the presentation now. Oh, sorry, is Serena here still? Or did she hop off? All right, I think she might have left.
So we're here to present our project on affordable housing that was given to us early in the summer by Sustainable CT. Just to give a little overview of what we'll be going through in this presentation, we have an agenda. So like we said, we just introduce ourselves. Again, I'm Monet. We're going to go through the project, what it was, how we approached it, how we created this database we will describe. Then we're going to go through understanding each COG, which the fellows will present on their own COG, and kind of diving deeper into the specifics of each different region. Then we'll go through strategies we found amongst affordable housing plans, look at recommendations that we created for not only Sustainable CT, but also for the COGs and towns as well. Then we'll go into limitations of the project, and then finally go over our whole storyboard and conclude with any questions that anyone has for us at the end of the presentation. So the project was to collect affordable housing plans across Connecticut. So in 1989, Connecticut introduced General Statute 830G, which required all municipalities to reach at least 10% affordable housing. But the state saw that this wasn't quite happening, so they added in a second statute, 830J, to encourage all municipalities to create an affordable housing plan and present it by this summer. So what our job was to collect the affordable housing plans we had available, put them into a searchable and usable database for anyone to access to sort through strategies used to implement affordable housing initiatives. And that's basically what we did. We started off the summer meeting, we set up weekly meetings to kind of outline what we wanted to do, collect data, affordable housing plans, put it all together. And that continued throughout the summer, which led to the ultimate database we will be showing you. So I will pass it to Lily to talk about what data we included there.
Thank you. So our first, we can start by describing the process that we took to create our databases and outline that, and then we can go through the databases themselves. So when we originally started this process, there is obviously a lot of information that relates to affordable housing, and we weren't really quite sure how to approach it. So we started by just doing some initial research and looking into affordable housing plans within our COGs and the towns, and sort of just gaining an understanding of what will relate to affordable housing in general. And so then with some guidance from WestCog, we were able to determine that we were going to focus specifically on the strategies within affordable housing plans, given that that is what the towns are actually planning on implementing and putting into place. So I can take you all to the database itself. And so we started by listing out all the strategies of the affordable housing plans as written. So we took them directly from the plans themselves, and that's listed under the strategies section. One initial roadblock that we ran into is there is a number of towns within Connecticut that don't have finalized affordable housing plans. So if they had a draft available, that's what we utilized. And if they simply lacked an affordable housing plan in general, we utilized their plan of conservation and development. And so we listed out all of the strategies, and they correspond to the towns themselves, and we have them for all of the COGs. And then through our familiarity with the strategies themselves, we then created a list of keywords of terms that describe significant strategies that we saw across COGs or that we believed to be impactful. And then we were able to divide those up into different umbrella terms, and those are listed here. You can see their development, education, finance, planning, program, subsidy, transportation, water, and zoning. And that was just a way to break up the key terms, and they created tags in a sense. So we then utilized an equation that would tag if those specific keywords were utilized within the actual strategy themselves. And this was made possible through Nick Trabka's help at WestCog. He helped us create the equations, which was incredibly helpful. Additionally, we also included where we got the information from. So we listed whether it came from, and we did the same for the plan of conservation and development. And then our second database that we created is our statistics database. And this is where we were able to include a lot of those numbers that originally came to mind when we thought about a database itself. I think initially, a lot of us, myself included, thought that a database would simply include numbers, but this was our opportunity to utilize census database. So we found relevant statistics, and we were able to include in this database, and that includes population data, broken down into ages as well. We also included housing information, such as the total housing units, whether or not they're vacant or occupied. We included cost burden individuals. So those are individuals who are spending 30% or more of their income on housing itself. And then there is additional information related to families and the makeup of the population itself. And this is an area that we certainly encourage further research to be done to fully understand the relationship between these statistics and affordable housing. And we found that the best way to utilize both databases is through filtering the actual information itself. So specifically with the strategies database, we found it incredibly helpful to filter by COG. So you can filter by COG and then choose your specific town. So if, for example, a municipal employee wanted to look specifically at their strategies for their specific town, they'd be able to find their COG and then they could check their town as well. And we really wanted this database to be comparable for all the different towns and COGs across Connecticut, and to truly be something that would be a helpful resource for these specific towns. And it was certainly a learning process, and it was very helpful to collaborate through our meetings and to be able to work on it together. And we were able to include every single COG in town, which was very interesting. And now I am able to pass it off to Emily at the Capital Region.
There we go. Thanks, Lily. So I'm super excited to have the privilege to talk about COG and kind of kick off our presentations about understanding each COG individually and diving more deeper into the data. So the Capital Region Council of Governments is the largest COG in Connecticut. It's got 38 different municipalities. Altogether, there's a population of over 975,000 people, according to the 2020 US Census. The largest town in COG is Hartford, with a population of just over 121,000 people. And Hartford is also considered the only fully urbanized municipality in COG. And then the smallest town would be Andover, with a population of just over 3,000 people. So as you can see, from the graph on the right, there's quite a large variety in population sizes from Andover to Hartford. And it also not only is a mixed bag with population sizes, but also demographics, and if it's urban, suburban, or rural. So according to the COG annual budget from the 21-22 fiscal year, like I said, Hartford is the only fully urbanized municipality, and 17 of the communities are suburban, while the remaining 19 are categorized as rural. Next slide, please. So as Lily mentioned, when we were collecting data for the strategies database, we really tried to look mostly for adopted affordable housing plans, as those would be considered probably the most accurate representation of affordable housing needs in any given municipality. So of the 38 municipalities in COG, 14 towns have adopted affordable housing plans, and 4 towns have draft affordable housing plans. And then when we were not able to derive the information from the affordable housing plan, whether it be adopted or draft, we would turn to the plans of conservation and development. So from COG, there were 19 towns that we got the data from their adopted POCDs, and 1 town, which was, I believe it was Enfield, Connecticut, we got the data from their draft POCD. And as you can see, most of, or at least half of the data from the strategies database was derived from the adopted POCD. And Quinn is going to talk a little bit later about why this might have been a limitation in our project. But for now, I will pass it along to Monet. She's going to discuss a little bit about affordable housing in the Capital Region.
So I'm going to talk about COG's relationship to affordable housing at the moment. So if you can find on the COG website, they have an Capital Region Affordable Housing Assessment that was done last November, which really gave a lot of good data on the demographic of the overall region and not just the municipalities. So it showed that there is a good amount of elderly adults, which is important to consider when thinking about affordable housing, as well as young citizens. So another thing that was seen was there was more single family development in COG being constructed, which is not very useful when thinking about increasing affordable housing, because usually single family units are not affordable and tend to be more expensive. COG also had an affordable housing toolkit, which was not accessible when I went to go access it, but that offered help to towns to create their affordable housing plans. So we are thinking, could CROG expand this, as some towns have not yet reached adopted affordable housing plans? Next slide, please, Lily. The next thing we looked at in CROG was the trends seen in the strategies that we had in the database. So there's a lot of focus on development, planning, and zoning, which is super important in getting to that 10% threshold set by the Connecticut General Statute, but may lack more emphasis on things like education and transportation that are still vital to creating good, robust, affordable housing for a wide range of people. So there might be a attitude where towns want to meet that threshold or have already met it, but are not going beyond that 10% to make sure that they are accessible by public transit or good for seniors or other factors that might be important to consider, which we will talk about more later in the presentation. But for now, I'll pass it on to Michio.
Hello, everyone again. I just want to make a note and recognize that Serena Livingston, who was the fellow at the Northwest Hills COG, was the one to put together these slides, and I'm just presenting on behalf of her in her absence. So to start off, for NHCOG, there's 21 towns with a population of 110,000. And out of those 21, 12 towns in this region adopted or had draft affordable housing plans. And so Torrington is kind of the regional center of NHCOG, with the economy very similar to the rest of the state, being primarily based on healthcare and social assistance industries. And so the median household income for this region is slightly higher than the state's average, coming in at 72,000, and significantly higher than the nation's average. And so the range of median household incomes in the region kind of varies from 55,000 in Torrington to upwards of 109,000 in Burlington. And so out of the 10,568 households, or 10,568 households are considered under housing costs burdened. And so that means they're spending over 30% of their income on housing, which includes 45% renters in the Litchfield County. And so 3,357 units of affordable housing exist, indicating that there's a need for 3,498 more units of affordable housing in order to reach that threshold. And so at least 1,520 households are on waiting lists, which is about 2 to 5 years, and 345 of those are senior citizens, which is something to note. And between 2010 and 2020, so over that 10-year period, 89 units of affordable rental housing were created in just 7 of the towns, showing kind of like a lack of growth within the region for affordable housing. So more specifically about the relationship to affordable housing in the Northwest Hills. So single family detached homes were the most common, which includes 3+ bedrooms. And because many households don't have children or are 65 plus in age, these units are, often very expensive and not very affordable for a lot of people. So having more diverse housing options and having more renter availability is really important. So high housing prices from 2016 to 2021, the median home sale prices rose on average by $115,000, which is an extremely high number. And so, one of the reasons for this is that there was extremely highly priced houses, in the multiple $1 million range, which obviously impacts the median, as well as obviously there are homes that are, far below the median. However, an issue that's found in the region is that, a lot of these homes that below this average need a lot of repairs and upgrades, which eventually make this process much more expensive than the original face value of the home. And so 46% of young adults aged between 19 and 34 still live with their parents, which is above the state average of 41%. And this can, be attributed to a lot of barriers of home ownership, as well as the lack of rental options in the area. And so, specifically looking at renters, access to home ownership is limited by student debt, low diversity of options, and high housing costs, which is obviously an issue all around the country, as well as in Connecticut. And so the gap between what renters can afford and median home prices ranges from $44,000 gap in Torrington to $724,000 gap in Washington. And so increase in short-term rental units in the region, such as Airbnb, limits options for full-time renters and drives up costs. Next slide, please. Another important factor to look at within the Northwest Hills COG is that there is a significant amount of weekend homes or second homes that, obviously people come up to go to vacationing and to get away during, the weekends and over the summer. And so 20% or more of the total housing units in 9 out of the 21 Northwest Hills COG towns are weekend homes, which obviously drive up the cost for local residents as, these houses tend to be very exuberant or very nice on, very desirable properties and everything, which obviously, drives up the cost in a lot of senses. And so general takeaways. So there's need for more single family detached homes, smaller sized homes, more rental options, and obviously affordable options, which we were talking about more broadly. And so if you want to check out any success stories in the Northwest Hills region, listed below are, a few stories that are successful. And I'll pass it on to the next person.
Hello, everyone. Today I have the privilege of introducing you all to the Northeastern Connecticut Council of Governments, which is a 16-town regional council of governments founded in 1987. These 16 towns vary greatly from small, low-population municipalities to more urban areas such as Killingly, which has a population of about 17,000 residents. Although the Metropolitan Council of Governments is the smallest COG in overall landmass, the Northeastern Connecticut Council of Governments is the smallest when it comes to population, with estimates putting the total number of residents at just under 100,000, which means that NECOG contains just under 3% of the state's total population. As you can probably infer, that means that NECOG has many low-density rural towns. Compared to the statewide average of about 650 persons per square mile, NECOG has only about 171 persons per square mile. For example, NECOG is home to the town of Union, which has the smallest population in Connecticut with under 800 residents according to the most recent census. On that note, NECOG towns are known for their rolling hills and wide swaths of open space. And if you are unmuted, please make sure to mute. Making their appearance significantly different than most other Connecticut municipalities. So due to its small population and rural aesthetics, the northeastern portion of Connecticut has been nicknamed the quiet corner of the state. But this summer, I had the privilege of working with many extremely passionate volunteers and local government officials about the ways in which they wanted to improve the towns that they call home. Next slide, please, Lily. Thank you. Moving on to NECOG's relationship to affordable housing, just over 60% of the NECOG towns have adopted an official affordable housing plan. And as of 2020, just 3 of them have reached the state's goal of having at least 10% affordable housing within a town. In fact, over half of the 16 northeastern towns have not managed to breach 5% affordable housing. Although there is unfortunately no official regional statistics for NECOG, I calculated several of my own using data from TSC Housing. For example, all but 2 NECOG municipalities have median ages above the state average of 41.1 years of age, with some towns having a median age over 15 years older than said average. This statistic has helped me understand why many of the towns that did manage to submit affordable housing plans put so much emphasis on expanding senior housing. It makes sense that these towns would want to prioritize aging populations when their median age is already so comparatively high. Additionally, 3/4 of NECOG's municipalities have a median household income above the state average of about $70,000, which may explain why several towns seemingly don't see the need for or are openly hostile towards the idea of affordable housing. Therefore, I believe that it would be beneficial to encourage education about the benefits of affordable housing and what it actually means, rather than residents and government officials' immediate assumptions about what affordable housing might look like. And now I will pass it on to Adrian.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to NVCOG. I'm proud to also live in this region as a resident of Derby, but here in NVCOG, we have 19 municipalities, a mixture of sort of more rural and suburban areas, and also some larger cities. And 3 of these 19 municipalities are considered distressed municipalities out of the 25 that currently exist in Connecticut. So as I mentioned, with the various types of different towns and cities, we have various housing types and settings, ranging from dense apartment homes in Waterbury to rural farm properties in Bethlehem and suburban single-family homes in Beacon Falls. In the region, we have 450,376 residents, and 30% of residents identify as people of color. And 35 years ago, this region was considered one of the last affordable locations near the economic centers of New York City and Southern Connecticut. And unfortunately, trends are indicating that housing prices have risen in this region and that this statement might no longer be true. Yep. And as for the relationship between NVCOG and affordable housing, firstly, we could look at the housing wage, which essentially refers to the hourly wage that a full-time worker must earn in order to afford a 2-bedroom rental home while also not being cost burdened, ranges from $22.54 to $27.37. So that coordinates to needing to get a yearly income of $46,000 to $56,000. So 20% of homeowners with mortgages and 25% of all renters in the region are cost burdened or severely cost burdened, meaning that they spend 30% or more of their income on their housing. Additionally, we do have most of our housing units occupied at 90%, and 2/3 of that are occupied by the owner of the property and 1/3 by renters. The median home value in the region is $253,300, but this was 2019 data, so I definitely expect that this number has risen during the pandemic. We are still in the pandemic, and the median gross rent at $1,000 and $1,066, estimated residential tax burden a little over $6,000, and overall 11% of housing is affordable in the region. And unfortunately, we only have 4 municipalities with over 10% of affordable housing units. So that's Ansonia, Bristol, Derby, and Waterbury. And also out of the 19 municipalities, only 6 have submitted their affordable housing plans thus far. And when we are comparing and contrasting various affordable housing strategies in the region, Michio and I noticed some trends. So some of those trends that we saw appear in multiple strategies across these different municipalities, looking at affordable housing complexes for elderly people in the town, reviewing zoning regulations, working with local nonprofits, considering mixed-use development in their downtown areas, constructing more housing units, and engaging in adaptive reuse of buildings. So yeah, thank you. And now I'll pass it to Adrian Beckford.
Again, so I'm working with SCROG this summer. SCROG has 15 municipalities, and this region is kind of a mix of dense urban areas, including one of the largest cities in Connecticut, New Haven, as well as having numerous rural areas. So there's a big mix in the type of housing that SCROG has. So there's about 570,000 residents within the SCROG area. And of the 220,000 households available, about 55% are owned, another 35 are rented, and about 10% is vacant. So, and about 30% of the population identify as a minority. So within the housing, the majority is made up from New Haven, West Haven, and Meriden, whose percent affordable housing stock is above 10%, which allows them to be exempt from the 830G rule. The rest of SCROG is not quite as affordable, with a significant amount of the households being cost burdened. And then on top of that, within the last couple of years, there's been a significant increase in housing sales prices, leading to an average of about 4.2% affordable housing in SCROG. So 11 out of the 15 towns have adopted the recent affordable housing this summer, and many of the SCROG towns focused on development, programs and zoning, more specifically the diversity of housing, such as including ADUs, multifamily housing, and deed restricted housing. And so the other foci included creating financing options and support for owners through housing trusts, as well as redefining zoning restrictions. And a lot of these strategies pertain to many other COGs, and they'll be talked about more in depth in regards to how we think they could be implemented. So that'll be talked about a bit later on in the presentation. So Liam, you can take it.
Hi everyone, at WestCog, we work with 18 different municipalities, and we have examples of rural, coastal, and urban communities. These municipalities have a direct line to New York City, so that attracts many people who like the access to the employment centers in the region and different modes of transportation. There are wide ranges of affordable housing percentages throughout the COG, and they're generally higher near more urban areas like Stamford and Danbury, and maybe a bit lower in different rural areas. And Lily will talk a little bit more in the next slide about the relationship to affordable housing within the COG.
Thank you. So just to start off, almost every single town within West COG has submitted either a draft affordable housing plan or a finalized affordable housing plan. The only exception is Norwalk, who has a plan of conservation and development and has noted that they are working on a affordable housing plan, but it is not yet complete or available for access. And additionally, there are only 2 towns within West COG that are considered exempt towns from 830G, and those are Stamford and Norwalk, which are some of our urban centers within West COG. And that means that they have exceeded the 10% requirement of affordable housing. And so the other 16 municipalities then are subject to 830G, and increasing their affordable housing stock should be a priority. Additionally, West COG has recognized their relationship to affordable housing and has created a affordable housing toolkit or toolbox, which includes relevant data and figures, and that ranges from current data as well as their historical relationship to affordable housing itself. And they have also created municipal annexes, which are in essence an affordable housing plan for several of the municipalities within West COG. So they have been helpful in the creation of affordable housing plans. And 2 specific strategies that we found of note within West COG are in lieu of fees and housing trust funds, which are intrinsically linked. And so in lieu fees are a part of 8 out of the 18 municipalities, and housing trust funds are a part of 10 of the 18 municipalities. So in lieu fees relate to housing trust funds because in lieu fees are when a developer will pay a fee instead of directly building the affordable housing requirement on site. So they'll pay this fee, and instead that affordable housing will be built elsewhere through the housing trust fund. So the fee in some cases can go directly to a housing trust fund that goes towards either the implementation or the construction or support of affordable housing. And housing trust funds can be incredibly successful if they are properly funded and they are able to know the area a bit better and work directly with the community itself. So these local housing trust funds can be incredibly important, and they were included in a significant number of the affordable housing plans. Additionally, West COG has also noted changes that they want to make in terms of zoning. So that includes accessory dwelling units and inclusionary zoning. They also included development and education methods. There's a wide variety of strategies that were included throughout the plans, which reflect the diverse nature of the area, as Liam noted. So they range from coastal to cities to rural areas as well. So there is a variety of strategies that were included throughout their plans. And now I can pass it on to Quinn at MetroCog.
Hi, I worked at MetroCog. The Metropolitan Council of Governments is responsible for 6 towns. And despite being the smallest region, it is demographically and physically diverse. The 6 towns in the COG are Bridgeport, which is the largest city in Connecticut, Fairfield, Monroe, Stratford, Trumbull, and Easton, which is one of the more rural towns in Connecticut. To note some demographics, like much of the United States, the MetroCog region has a large concentration of baby boomers, so it has a large aging population. Additionally, towns have very different socioeconomic conditions, from income to education to housing tenure. To compare an income indicator, Bridgeport's household median income in 2020 was $47,484 compared to Easton's median household income of $166,875. The economic opportunities and strategies also vary greatly between the 6 MetroCog municipalities when comparing their land use and their real estate. The city of Bridgeport is unique within the region, given its longtime industrial and maritime history, whereas the other 5 municipalities have their own development patterns. Most notably, the town of Easton has very little non-residential activity and only 3 brick and mortar businesses. An additional physical attribute is the region's close proximity to New York City and location along I-95. This makes it an attractive location to live and also plays a role in the region's affordable housing strategy considerations. Next slide, please. To give a housing overview, compared to elsewhere in Connecticut and specifically Lower Fairfield County, occupancy costs are cheaper in the region. This is both an advantage and disadvantage, as the region is able to attract tenants wanting to be in Fairfield County but unable to pay for more expensive locations. Construction costs are similar in the MetroCog region to other areas of Fairfield County. This means that all else equal, developers would rather build in areas where they're likely to net a higher return. This has caused a housing development struggle within the region, primarily in Bridgeport. All 6 towns did not meet the 10% affordable housing threshold and are therefore subject to 830G. And 4 of the 6 have adopted their affordable housing plans. So the other 2, I took information from their plans of conservation and development and their draft plans of affordable housing. The baby boomer generation is becoming less likely to reallocate after retirement. The declining workforce combined with lower than typical housing turnover will require MetroCog communities to encourage new housing development to be able to sustain and expand upon current economic activity levels. So this highlights a further need beyond the CGS for affordable housing in the MetroCog area. Some strategies that I found within their affordable housing to address the need for senior housing and in congruence with their overall need for affordable housing are accessory dwelling units, multifamily housing, mixed use development. ADUs are especially important in smaller, more rural areas of the COG, like Easton, Monroe, Fairfield, that note in their plans that they should be located near transportation infrastructure, whereas mixed use development can be especially useful in a town or a city, like Bridgeport, with a higher population density than the rest of the towns. And then the need to update zoning regulations was also a prevalent strategy among MetroCog towns to accommodate more affordable housing. Easton, for example, is looking to modify their zoning regulations to allow a smaller lot for an affordable unit deed restricted perpetuity, as long as looking how they can use their additional farm space for affordable housing. Whereas in Bridgeport, where there's a higher population density and more of a robust downtown, zoning regulations to be updated are more focused on mixed use and mixed family developments. So now I'll pass it on to Liam Remus with the River COG.
Hello, I'm Liam, as said, I was with the River COG. This COG has 17 municipalities, which include Chester, Clinton, Cromwell, Deep River, Durham, East Haddam, East Hampton, Essex, Haddam, Killingworth, Lyme, Middlefield, Middletown, Old Lyme, Old Saybrook, Portland, and Westbrook, all of which submitted municipal affordable housing plan, except for Haddam. These are primarily, a lot of these towns are like low density, small rural towns that make up going along the Connecticut River Valley. The stagnance, of the COG, the population is stagnant on the verge of declining, with the population mainly being older, with the median age around 46.6, with the most decreasing population over the years being those of 18, showing that it's less about younger families coming into the neighborhood, more just older people that are staying within the neighborhood, with younger people moving out or finding work otherwhere. 31% of homes in the area are cost burden, and there is a median income of 126,000, which is above both the national and Connecticut median income. There's a limited availability for local jobs, around 76,000 regionally seen in the regional plan. This is, as I said, like one of the main struggles for the area is just finding local jobs and also keeping people within the COG. This is also seen within, like, there's a weak housing market, little demand for new developments. So not only is there like limited housing available, but there's not many housing projects being developed with just little demand for new housing to be built in the area. Next slide. So for River COG and affordable housing, there's a regional housing plan that's been working on, that's been drafted this summer and is being talked about with the towns. One of the main goals of the plan in looking into it would be to develop new transit options like biking and walking, allowing residents to be in closer proximity to their jobs. This is, as like seen before, if you go around the River COG, most areas need to be accessed by cars. A lot of roads don't have sidewalks or biking lanes. It's mainly just a bunch of rural roads with limited availability. So if you don't have a car, your options are limited to the amount of local jobs you can have, meaning that most people in the neighborhood or in the region have to take a car to work and just can't have readily accessibility. And another part of this regional housing plan was to create a regional housing commission. The first phase was more education research about affordable housing within the region. The second phase to be added would be more data collection and data sharing between the towns, and a third would be like an eventual expansion of the authority to administer trust funds and take on some affordable housing municipal services that are currently being operated by the towns. In this report, it's also suggested that if the region adapts to the regional POCD, which is also passed in previous years, there'd be a projected growth of nearly 600 yearly housing units, which is much more than the current projected, which would be 200 unit annual projection of growth. So really the aim of the region just kind of expand the amount of housing that's being developed in the area. And municipal actions that are pretty much common throughout the municipal housing plans are, there's a focus to preserve natural landscapes and rural environments. A lot of towns pride themselves being on the Connecticut Valley River, so they want to kind of preserve those municipal landscapes. For instance, that was like a main theme in like East Hadam's POCD and both affordable housing plan. And nearly every town has plans to create a housing trust fund and also expand awareness among town members about the Department of Housing trust funds and CHFA resources available through the state. And there's also some towns with the population becoming older, either want to expand elderly housing units, or if new development's not possible, there's also options to have elderly tax relief just to make it so there's less of a burden on older people living within the COG or the region, and to study and implement more inclusionary zoning within their towns. Next slide.
Hi, so last but not least, I'm going to tell you a little bit about SCOG. We have 22 towns. I'm not going to list them all because there's many. And we border on Rhode Island with a population a little bit under 300,000. SCOG is a relatively economically impoverished area with 7 towns on the distressed municipality list, which signals an obvious need for affordable housing. It is also the only council of government that includes indigenous land, which is unique, and it ranges from more urban to like New London, Norwich, etc., to rural, which Griswold and North Stonington are 2 examples of that. And there is a significant aging population in this part of the state. And there are only 4 towns that are exempt from 830G. Those are Norwich, Wyndham, New London, and Groton. Next slide, please. Okay, so to the right here, I've made a little map of the different affordable housing plans that were submitted. Of course, There is one inaccuracy in that Lebanon did submit an affordable housing plan, but I did not include that on here, so be cognizant of that. But out of the 22 municipalities, all but 4 have submitted affordable housing plans, which is amazing. And so the needs of this region are very specific. There are 2 disparate needs for affordable housing. First, young professionals who have come to work at places like Electric Boat in Groton or Pfizer and also in Groton, and aging older individuals who may want to stay near family, stay in the neighborhoods that they grew up in or lived in for very long times and were part of the community. So those are 2 different groups of people who would need affordable housing. It's also a relatively rural area. There's no possibility of building skyscrapers. And as we've noticed, the municipalities that were exempt from 830G, meaning that they have above 10% of affordable housing, are all towns that are more urban. So the need is most strong in, for example, North Stonington, which only has about 2% affordable housing. So the most obvious or the most typical housing system is single family homes that are occupied by their owner. So many of the affordable housing plans I went through included these 3 different tenants. First off is requiring a certain percentage of new developments to be zoned affordable. This includes in towns like Griswold and North Stonington that are very limited in the affordable housing options. Accessory dwelling units are a very popular choice, especially because they give the option for seniors to live close to family and also at times stay close to their house if they cannot keep it up. And in addition to this, missing middle housing options are encouraged for younger individuals, duplexes and triplexes that do not take on the typical characteristics of apartment buildings, but are still a good option for folks in terms of affordability. And in addition to this, I've seen a couple of more creative solutions for affordable housing that residents have made themselves or have been developed through the need for affordable housing. One of this is the prevalence of Airbnbs in Stonington, which has been a topic of significant debate, but a lot of aging individuals and folks who own their homes in Stonington have taken to renting out their homes on Airbnb for in order to pay the taxes and stay in their homes or in a section of it. And then also in Montville, there's a lot of discussion over mobile homes and trailers as an affordable housing option, even though it is not zoned affordable housing. So yeah, and I'm going to pass it on to Michio, who will take us to the next part of our presentation.
Awesome. So the next section of our presentation is kind of really the compilation of all of the research that all the fellows did. And so we came up with several different recommendations. And so what I'll be talking about are recommendations that we specifically thought of for Sustainable CT, and other folks will follow with other recommendations for COGs and municipalities. So for Sustainable CT, what we came up with is the encouragement and assessment to municipalities to establish a formal affordable housing committee / authority if they haven't already, and ensure it will be sustainable in the long run with resources and network of connections in the town government. And so one aspect that we thought about was, who is involved with this. And so, within the towns, we thought the economic development folks, Board of Selectmen / aldermen, and planning and zoning were all very valuable people to have a part of this group. And then next we have towns should be able to earn additional points for going above and beyond and implementing their affordable housing plan, supporting prospective homebuyers / renters with a focus on equity and inclusion, and advocating for regional and statewide affordable housing. And so, that's kind of self-explanatory with what Sustainable CT does and everything. And so the final one for this section is to train equity coaches or bring on new consultants to serve as resources to guide towns in implementing their affordable housing strategies, as obviously this is an area where, certain towns may struggle with, may not even be aware of, the affordable housing issue in their region, and having these extra resources would be very valuable for them. Okay.
Yeah, and so there are some new action recommendations for Sustainable CT. One of the action recommendations is being an active participant in the creation of regional approaches to affordable housing, encouraging collaboration and the emphasis on equity that can be created within inter-regional collectives that help to put together housing plans. Also, another one is creating a list of all the different resources, basically like a toolkit or a fact sheet for all the different affordable housing programs and possible developments that have already been put together in just a centralized location so that residents who are in need of those things know where to go. Also holding workshops about different loan programs. There are many. And that's a good way to get folks to be able to purchase homes. And finally, educating the public about the town-wide benefits of affordable housing. This is particularly important for folks who are so-called civil servants. So firefighters, police officers, teachers, all the folks who work within the government and engage with the community on a regular basis deserve to live in the places where they are teaching or working. And so for this reason, emphasizing and teaching folks about that why is a really important step to encouraging affordable housing in the future. And I'm going to pass it on to Adrian.
Yeah. So now we are in the municipal recommendation section where we provide some various recommendations about how municipalities can support themselves really in implementing their strategies and going above and beyond. So firstly, we have encouraging them to connect with the local housing authorities and nonprofits in their area, so they're able to tap into the expertise that these organizations already have on affordable housing needs in the community. They can also consult with local community land trusts, and this will allow them to sort of run by them new development or adaptive reuse opportunities, and also to offer support to their current initiatives and efforts on providing affordable housing opportunities to residents. They can also think about creating livable areas, beyond just building housing. What else can they do to improve their communities? And so an example for this that is applicable to cities could be trying to implement the 15-minute city urban concept, which is overall a vision where a city is focused on transit-oriented development and denser mixed-use development, and ultimately, so the residents within a 15-minute walk or bike ride that they can access most daily necessities and human needs. And that model is also helpful because people who need affordable housing are also less likely to have cars, more likely to use public transit. And so transit-oriented development is a great way to supplement affordable housing efforts. Additionally, municipalities can connect with local organizations that work on low impact development or energy efficiency and connect them with developers from the get-go so that sustainability is part of the development process for any new developments that come up for more units. Additionally, we would love to see municipalities really engaging with the community directly, so soliciting feedback from residents to see where and what kind of housing is needed and useful for them. And they should also advertise opportunities and resources regularly to town residents and make sure they're updated. And lastly, they can train their planning and zoning commission members on equity as it relates to housing. So for example, on topics such as redlining, legacies of housing segregation, housing discrimination, et cetera.
So we have kind of a three-pronged approach for recommendations to COG specifically, and those include regional approaches to housing, having a kind of a general availability of information, and really supporting local affordable housing plan work. So specifically within regional approach to housing, we're really looking for COGs to develop a regional housing toolkit. So better understanding how housing is being progressed and built upon within the regional community, and conducting a regional survey to better gather housing needs within their COG. Next, we really would value having an availability of information for local municipalities and really collecting relevant affordable housing data in a centralized location, as Annika was mentioning before. So they're collecting affordable housing plans and POCDs. So municipalities can go on to regional affordable housing documents and see what other towns are having for their strategies and what they can kind of take and use for their own situation. Next, really supporting local affordable housing plans. So compiling data on and supporting local projects that are happening in relation to affordable housing, which can help build these different projects within the region as well. And as well as creating an affordable housing position, which is a suggestion within certain COGs. So being able to have one point person that local municipalities can come back and work with on their affordable housing actions. And lastly, actively working with local housing committees. So within municipalities, they'll have these committees that are driven towards affordable housing, but might need some help. So on a COG level, being able to work with those local housing committees could be very valuable in building towards affordable housing goals. And I'll pass it on to Monet for the next slide.
So after compiling all these recommendations, it's important to think about back how this relates to 830G and how it can go beyond it. Looking at different towns and working with different towns, there might be a certain attitude that once they reach that 10% threshold, there's no more work to be done. But we believe that it's important for not only Sustainable CT, but also COGs and municipalities to acknowledge that this can go beyond just reaching that 10% threshold in which homes don't cost more than 30% of a resident's income. So they might want to be thinking about affordable housing in a sense that is it close to public transit? Can people get to work? People get to grocery stores or pharmacies? Are they incorporating mixed use development into this? Is there adequate housing for seniors and what type of needs there would be there? So beyond just like getting towns to reach the threshold, we think it's important to also think about how this can be best suited in terms of equity issues or just general demographics of different municipalities and COGs. And I will pass to Quinn.
Okay. So as we went through the process of searching for towns' affordable housing plans and reviewing their strategies, we ran into some barriers and discovered limitations within the plans themselves, some of which I will mention right now. So the first of which is that many towns, almost half actually, haven't published their affordable housing plans despite the deadline being last month. This forced us to look into secondary documents such as towns' plans of conservation developments, and in other cases, draft plans of conservation and development, which are often outdated. And out of other cases, we looked at draft affordable housing plans, which may not fully reflect the finalized goals and strategies of the towns in their affordable housing plans. Another limitation was a lack of mainstream language across town strategies, which made it difficult to draw comparisons between plans and just added an extra layer of work to decipher differing terms that may have held the same meanings. Not to state the obvious, but another limitation is just that towns are different themselves with differing demographics, geographies, preferences of land use, demand for affordable housing, stages in their affordable housing processes, and resources to implement such strategies. A confluence of these factors limit towns in their motivations and/or implementation of affordable housing. Lastly, I'll touch on how 830G can be a double-edged sword. So while it is the most impactful in increasing affordable housing in the state, it can also complicate and intervene other strategies towns use in the affordable housing development process. In the case of a builder's remedy lawsuit, a developer can file a suit for the opportunity to construct housing at higher densities than a municipality would otherwise allow. The town and its planning and zoning board lose all control over the zoning of the subject property. The laws created concerns of predatory developers that do not align with the housing goals of the town. In many cases, developers are only willing to build the minimum amount of affordable housing required in the project, making it more challenging for towns to reach affordable housing goals in their affordable housing plans. Since 830G projects are rarely denied because of how challenging the process of appealing it, this can be a limitation for municipalities. So now I'll pass it on to Lily to talk about the storyboard.
Thank you. So our final product is our storyboard, which includes links to our databases, an interactive map, and some additional considerations that we took into account. And so, oh, sorry. Let's see if it'll let me go to the link really quickly. Okay, there we go. So included in our storyboard is a title page, and then the next button of note is a button that can take you to the full report that all of the fellows completed. This is where we discussed our strategies, we discussed COG relationships to the strategies themselves, as well as a full list of our recommendations. So then if you scroll down a little bit further, there is a map where if you press on a town, you can then see the linked affordable housing plan, as well as the plan of conservation and development if it pertains to the certain area. So for example, it loads, if you press on Greenwich, you can then press this arrow button and you can see both the affordable housing plan and the plan of conservation and development. If you press on those links, it'll bring you directly to those pages to look at for your reference. This is also a way to see if a town has an affordable housing plan, because if they do, as of last week, it will be linked here. Our next part is where we outlined the process that we took to create our strategies database. And then the strategies database itself is linked here. It is usable both within the actual storyboard itself, or you can open it in a separate page. Then we also outline the process for our statistics database, and the census database is available here. The same thing is true. You can interact with it on the page, or you can open it in an additional tab. And finally, we just talked about some additional considerations related to affordable housing that we came across as we were doing some initial research, and those include transportation, open space, and sewers and septic, because those all heavily impact both the creation of affordable housing, the need for affordable housing, as well as just overall how a town may relate to affordable housing. And so that concludes our storyboard. So now we would like to just thank some people who are incredibly impactful in our final products, as well as just the process of this project. So first off, we'd like to thank everyone at WestCog, especially Nick Trabka, who is incredibly helpful in the creation of our databases. Next, we'd like to thank Sustainable CT staff. We'd also like to thank Savannah Nicole Lave at MVCOG, Amanda Kennedy, Nicole Haggerty, and Justin LaFountain at South SCC COG. And we'd just like to thank everyone at all the COGs who have been helpful in the creation of our final product. And we would now like to open it up to any questions that anyone may have.
This is Amanda at Southeastern COG. I'm wondering if there were any big takeaways as a result of putting that database of strategies together. Is there a way to tell which strategies are of most interest in different kinds of towns based on your research?
Certainly. So that's where the filter tools really come into play and can be incredibly impactful. So one way that you could choose to filter the materials is by strategy. I can pull it up and show you all if that would be helpful. So for example, if you wanted to look specifically at zoning across all of the different COGs and whether or not that was a consideration taken in the affordable housing plans, that's something that you could filter for. So if you just give me one moment, I can share my screen and then I can show you how you can accomplish that. So if you are looking at the database itself and you go to the zoning section and you want to see the places that have implemented it, all the different towns, you would select just the yeses because that will include all the towns that used it. And then you can scroll through and see that there's a significant number in capital region. You scroll further down. So a large number of places in capital region, it was included in Metro COG and ECOG. So you can see that there's a lot of towns that took that into consideration. And if you're curious what we included under zoning, you can see that that related to open space subdivision, inclusionary zoning, mixed use, sewer and septic. And so that's when you would go in further and you can go through and read the actual strategies themselves, or you can refer to the original affordable housing plan or plan of conservation development. So there are definitely methods to look for things in particular if there is a certain area of interest that you want to see if it was implemented across multiple places and towns.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Jacob from Capital Region COG. I was just wondering sort of the pairing in the beginning of your presentation, obviously how it is. Hartford is paired with a bunch of suburban and then rural communities. And I was sort of wondering how, since Hartford is standalone a little bit in its urban classification within the CROG, how that affects like housing and affordable housing. And with those effects, how might we mitigate that due to its surrounding suburban area?
So CROG was one very interesting area where it did have that one urban center. Looking at how the regions could deal with it, it's very much looking at an approach that doesn't single out Hartford for being urban. So to mitigate that, we weren't able to look specifically at each town in depth because there were 38 towns in CROG, but there are lots of strategies that are useful in multiple types of centers, but it's especially helpful to look at how Hartford can be looked at as unique, but able to house its certain demographics. So that's where the census data becomes really useful, because you can see where different municipalities differ and how that can be used to specifically tailor strategies to certain areas. But CROG is very vast and should be looking at ways they're not only helping suburban areas and rural areas, but also Hartford as well.
I would say too, to add on to that, Monet, just kind of being aware of the differences between Hartford and the other municipalities within CROG. So we know that Hartford has a very large capacity for population, which means that we need to match that capacity with resources and creating employment opportunities, maybe on a municipal level for people, like we said in our recommendations slide, about people who can help kind of distribute these resources to sustainable developers, building developers who can all increase the affordable housing.
Thank you.
This is Chris Henchy from the Capital Region Council of Governments, sitting directly behind Jacob right now. Question for you all. Has any towns that you have come across pursued any affordable housing changes with potential for a form-based code? Did that come up in any of y'all's research of POCDs or affordable housing plans?
Not one that's coming to mind specifically. I'm not sure if any of the other fellows have recognized any.
Sorry, we're doing our own like research and stuff like this, so you guys are being used as a great resource right now. Thank you.
Yeah, something that we have some ideas on, at least here, lower staff level. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Any further questions from anybody?
If that is the end of the questions, I do just want to give you all a virtual round of applause. It was an amazing project. It's an amazing tool. And for those that are on today from outside of the Sustainable CT organization, know that we will be using this research and this tool to develop our programming, and our programming is just going to be designed to support the plans that these towns have developed. So it is an ongoing tool. While their presentation concluded today, know that the work that what they have done is going to be used to inform future work and work here at Sustainable CT. So thank you all. All right, thanks everybody. And we will have a copy of this available if it's something that you want to reference in the future, or if you need a copy, just let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.